Hello, guys. Welcome to another episode of the e-commerce lab by Ecomcy, the place where everything related to Amazon, FBA, parallel, and e-commerce. My name is Vincenzo Toscano, your host, founder, and CEO of Ecomcy. And today, we're bringing our special guest. His name is Michal, and he's the founder and CEO of Scalport, where they specialize on everything that has to do with systemizing your Amazon business and creating teams. And on top of that, he sold and exited an Amazon eight-figure business. So he has a ton of experience when it comes to go from 0 to 100, and that's what we're going to be talking about today, because I feel Amazon sellers struggle a lot to really understand once they reach certain stage how you create the right systems and teams within your business so the business can basically work without you being there night and day. So Michele, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. How you doing, my friend?
I'm happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me, and I'm doing well.
And it's a pleasure, man. We just shared an amazing few days in Prague, where Orange Click, the European Seller Conference. So it was a great experience, man. What do you think about the event? Was good, right?
Yeah, I enjoyed it a lot. This was my second year. I also attended last year when I was speaking, and this year I just came to learn and meet other people, and it was great. I feel like it's getting better every year, so I'm already excited for the next one.
Yeah, it's super exciting because at the same time, I feel the nice thing of this event is that they bring speakers from all around the globe, and it's bringing experience to the European market that is lacking. And I feel the European sellers are definitely benefiting from that. So it was awesome. Now, let's start with you, Michael. I mean, you have an amazing experience as a seller before, of course, jumping to your company Scalport. So let's touch a little bit on that, because it's not a everyday thing that people are able to grow a business up to eight figures and have an exit. So tell me how that happened.
Yeah, so I spent 4 years managing and growing an Amazon business, which we scaled to eight figures. We sold the business in 2021. I built the business with my business partner, Miles. And I realized that systems and building a team was essential because we got pretty much stuck when we reached around seven figures because I was mostly running the business on my own at that time. And of course, as you probably know as well, spinning so many plates, wearing so many
Yeah.
hats, you
Rich
will get
plateau.
so busy.
Yeah.
You will get so busy that there is no chance to keep the business growing indefinitely without getting help. And of course,
Exactly.
initially hiring someone for the first time, since this was the first business I ever started, I had no experience with hiring. So hiring for the first time was quite tricky. It did not go well, right? Because our my idea was that I would bring someone on board and just give them what I don't feel like doing, having
Exactly.
some kind of a personal assistant. And sooner or later, I basically realized that after a while, that I spent most of my time just explaining what I need them to do,
Exactly.
how to do it,
Hmm.
and spending just so much time managing the person that most of the time I was like, okay, I better just do it myself.
Exactly.
And that
Hmm.
that I realized that was my probably biggest mistake because the reason for that was that we never really clarified what we actually want the person to do. So there was no clear accountability, right? So I believe that understanding this was really essential for growing our business. And we didn't really need many employees. We got to eight figures with just two employees, which we kept the team very small, very efficient,
Nice.
and basically being laser focused.
Hmm. Very good. Yeah, I think that's a tricky one, because I feel most of us Amazon sellers, let's be honest, when we jump into the space, most of us start doing this as a side hustle, and we don't come from a business background. So then having to jump and figure out, how to do some HR, finding the right people, interviewing, and so on, is tough. And I agree with you. Like, most people feel that hiring a person is just to throw them at the sharks, and we hope they figure out on their own. I mean, sometimes it could happen if you're lucky, but realistically, if you don't have strong SOPs and systems, it's really challenging. So I guess that's what I want to jump to, because I mean, that's what your company is all about, right? At Scale Airport, you specialize on creating the systems and really helping Amazon
Yeah.
sellers to figure out what is the right approach to do certain tasks within the Amazon business. So I guess the first question I have for you is like, how do you know that is the right moment to create systems within your business? Because I guess for somebody that's getting started, maybe it's not a must, but there are certain stages that definitely. So how you identify that as a seller? Like, yeah.
Yeah. So I do. There is of course no specific threshold that I would say once you reach
Mm-hmm.
1 million in revenue you have to hire. But in general, I would say sooner rather than later, because a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people want to start hiring when
The
they feel
fire is
busy,
there.
right? Yes, exactly. They are extremely busy and now realize, okay, I 100% need someone as soon as possible. But of course, if they are already very busy, they don't have the time to actually go through the hiring process properly. So they do the first thing, right? I need to hire as quickly as possible, which is the first mistake. Usually try to hire slowly, try to understand what do you need the person to do, right? So we want to avoid that mistake. But I think it's also important to understand that we hire to grow the business, right? We should not wait to get to a certain level of revenue to bring someone on board. So, in general, I would say sellers should understand how they spend their time. And as soon as they realize that most of their time is being spent just maintaining the business, supply, customer service, operations, optimizing PPC, and all of that stuff, they should really start thinking about bringing someone on board so they can delegate or at least start outsourcing to some expert where they can get help.
Awesome, awesome. I think, yeah, that's a mistake I did myself as well. Like even within the agency, sometimes you say, "Oh, I think I can manage a few more months without the person." Then
Yeah.
few clients come in, or even myself as a seller, launch more products, and then you you, you fall into the trap of having to do that, figure it on the go, and yeah, it's a huge red flag. That so, thank you for sharing that. I guess being said that is how you even know which position to hire first because as an Amazon seller, you wear so many hats. You use the PPC, you are the PPC hat, the inventory management hat, pro research, pro launch, like so many things. Like how you as a seller prioritize what is the first thing you need to get out of your plate? Like what is your advice on?
Yeah, the first thing I would do is to understand that every single task in the business has a different value, different impact on the business, right? And we can see it as a spectrum of tasks from
Mhm.
low level tasks, the most basic things, to really high level tasks, tasks that really impact the business as it is. So from the low level tasks, we can think about it as like creating labels for your shipment, right? That doesn't
Mhm.
create much value, but it needs to be done. And overall, the underlying idea here is that we want to free up our time from the low level task and redirect it towards the high level tasks, right? So for most sellers, it will begin with customer service and supply. Of course, we have different businesses where I can see some sellers we work with that they are heavily spend a lot of time in product research. So maybe they will
Mhm.
need help there. But again, I would look into the inputs, right? Look into the time you invest in the business and see where you are spending the time and where you can replace it for cheapest, right? Because, for
Yeah.
example, when I go back to creating labels for Amazon shipments, you can find people to do it for
Yeah.
just a few
Exactly.
dollars per hour. So you can then get back that time, buy back that time, so you can redirect it towards something that has more value, like product development.
Yeah, that's super important. I feel sometimes people don't know how to put value to their time. Because I feel, yeah, I totally agree. Like if you are already a seven-figure business, an example, and you really calculate the work you bring to the business, you shouldn't be doing like labels. You shouldn't be doing
Yeah.
a raising a case support with Amazon. Like there are certain things that can be automated, and I feel the sooner you identify that and you buy that time is key because, and I'm sure you 100% support this lemma. It's like you have to work on your business, not in your business, and that's all about
Exactly.
creating their systems and teams around that. Now, when it comes to systems, most people also struggle to really design the right SOP, the right procedure, and all that because, let's be honest, most people haven't done that before. So I guess from the point of view of you that you're doing this with all your clients and so on, like what is some advice you can give to an Amazon seller in terms of how to even get started to design a system? Like what are some of the key points you should consider?
Yeah, so when it comes to creating systems, I always like to start at the high level because what people usually do is that they really start creating SOPs in a way that they say exactly what needs to be done step by
Mm.
step. But of course, if we want to create an SOP for every single thing we do in business and we
Yeah.
want to make everything step by step, by the time you finish this huge database of SOPs, you can start over again because everything's changed, right?
Yeah.
So the first step, I would say, focus on the high level. That's where you want to be as structured as possible. And when you get closer to specific tasks, let there be some freedom, focus on the SOPs, rather record a video than writing down a super structured step-by-step document. But I think that the decision really starts with the software you're going to use, right? If you are going to write your SOPs with pen and paper, even if
Yeah.
you do a good job, it's probably not going to be helpful, right? So start with choosing the right software. I personally use Notion for Company Wiki, where
Yeah.
I keep track of all of the knowledge, all of the databases I have, and Asana for task management, right? Or project management. So
Yeah.
we have this software we can then leverage that's been designed for these specific areas in the business, whether it's storing your SOPs or assigning tasks, right? And once we do that, once we choose the software we wish to use, start at the high level. What are the systems in the business, right? Product development, supply, customer service, marketing. Start categorizing it so you can actually see what are the different areas and different functions in the business. And this categorization then also helps understand what you need to delegate, where you need the help. It makes you understand what are the areas where you will hire someone, what is the specific role, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's actually super helpful because I feel I see that mistake all the time as well. Like people try to be super detailed. Like number one, log in. Number two, click here. Number three, and then
Yeah,
it's like, yeah. By the time it's true, like what you say is spot on. Like all SAPs change all the time, especially with Amazon. Imagine PPC. It's impossible to do an SAP at PPC level because
yeah,
there's always new things coming up with PPC. So I like that insight at high level. Like I guess what you're trying to say with that, and maybe you can elaborate on that, is that you should define what is the goal of that system, right? Like what is the end
exactly.
goal you want to
Yeah,
achieve?
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's super important. That's a great point because we always start with defining the objective of each and every single process in the business, right? Because when you start with the objective, it then everything kind of falls in line and you know what needs to be done, right? And of course, when we start delegating, understanding the objective is essential, right? When we have someone who already has experience, sometimes sharing the objective is enough. If you have someone who understands how to do things, you just tell them what the objective is, and then they can just reverse engineer the steps.
Yeah, super important. Now, when you're doing this transition, I guess they start creating the systems. I guess for the Amazon sale that goes through this transition, what is usually the change in the role? Because I guess then you go from being the person that actually implement these actions yourself to then having a person in charge. But at the same time, I guess you will still recommend to have some kind of supervision or still manage um, or supervise the objectives at a KPI level, maybe in terms of what are they doing, what are we achieving. So I guess what I'm trying to say with all this is like how an Amazon seller, once you start implementing systems, you can actually measure if they actually improving on your business, if you see what I mean. Is there a way high level you can measure that?
Yeah, I think like it's important for the seller to first understand the shift in their role in the business, right? As you
Mm-hmm.
said, they want to kind of transition what we call to get from the role of an operator
Mm-hmm.
working in the business to an owner, start working on the business. So initially, the first step they do is they remove themselves from the low level tasks. So the
Mm-hmm.
supervision there is just making sure that it's been done, right? It doesn't have to be perfect, right? The low
Yeah.
level tasks, they just need to be done. So the supervision there is minimal. We just want to make sure that it's finished. But once we start raising higher and higher, and maybe we will hire, let's say, a brand manager, right? Someone who is
Mm-hmm.
doing the product research. We want to define KPIs, what actually success looks like, right? And I also, when I hire, I like to define what failure looks like as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
We not only we define the KPIs, what we want them to achieve, I also like to define, once again, from the high level perspective, what I see the success to be if I bring the brand manager on board
Yeah.
and what the failure would look like. In this particular case, the failure would be that as the manager, you have to consistently step in and review their work, correct their mistakes, right? Or they would launch a product that the profitable analysis didn't look right from the beginning, right? And they're just having the rough picture of what we actually want them to do, and then handing this to them, right? So this is something I also share instead of just sharing KPIs, some metrics, some numbers. I like to really define what I want them to do and what is the role in their business.
Yeah, yeah. Now, I guess, of course, creating the system is one thing because you can, of course, start creating the drafts, as we already mentioned. What are the goals? What we're trying to get out of your plate? But I guess where the system can really basically reach bottleneck is like if you don't hire the right people, right? Like building the teams around the systems. And I guess that's a tough thing to do, specifically if you have systems that are very specific to things within the Amazon space that, as we all know, sometimes not easy to find people that are skilled with this. Um, and I guess what I'm trying to say with all this, like as an Amazon seller, how you even then once you figure out the system to some extent, then are able to find the right person for those systems. Because as I said, you can have the right systems, but if you don't have the right people, then everything falls down. What is the starting point? Like where you should start as a seller to start finding those people to create a team? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So the way we start, what we implement is what I call a hiring funnel, which is essentially a funnel where we want to attract as many relevant candidates as possible and then filter them out through multiple stages. Of course, the more complex, the more advanced the role is, the more stages we have. But in general, we want to out of our first step is to first of all define the role what we want to bring on board, and that is defined based on the systems we wish to delegate, right? So rather than thinking who should I hire, think about what systems and processes I wish to delegate. I put it together and I will get something, right? There should be some synergy. We don't want to delegate creative and analytical tasks to one person. Ideally, there needs to be some synergy, but then again, we are not building a team of 20 people, let's say, right, in the beginning. So what we want to do is to create the synergy. And the way I defined it, for example, our supply manager can be accountable for inventory management. They can be accountable for the whole supply chain, for supplier research, for working with freight forwarders, inspections, and all of that stuff, right? So once we define this, identify really what we want them to do, we can then pull out what are the requirements for that role, right? What are the skill sets? What is the experience we want them to have? And create this essentially bundle that really defines what their role will be in the business. Once we do that, we can start crafting the funnel. The first step, craft the job ad. And when you are crafting the job ad, think about a way to craft this so it discourages everyone who's not a good fit and attracts everyone who is, right? We do not want to attract as many people as possible. We want to attract as many relevant people as possible. Usually, I say at least 80 to 100 candidates at the top of the funnel. Okay. Once we do that, have a questionnaire, right? To quickly filter out the people that simply are not a good fit, right? We ask them 8 to 12 relevant questions about that particular role. And once again, since we already defined what we want them to do, this is not a hard task to come up with some relevant questions. Ideally, something that they cannot Google as easily. Exactly. Usually, going through the questionnaire filters out like 60 to 70% of the candidates. Most people won't be willing to do that, which is a sign that they are not a good fit. If it's for the people who pass, we usually share a test task that is very specific to their role. Ideally, that is a task they will be doing on a regular basis. Like a supply manager, it could be calculating a shipping plan, right? Creating a shipping plan for the supplier, for the forwarder, and essentially something they will be doing every single week or every single day. And once we filter it down to like 5, 6 candidates, we can then start scheduling interviews. The reason for that, why we are filtering it through these stages, is that filtering out the questionnaire doesn't take that much time on our end. We do not want to do 80 to 100 interviews. We would spend so much time doing that. So we want to filter them out and talk only to the best candidates that are very likely to be a good fit. But even if you do everything correctly, it can still happen that you don't find a good candidate. And that's completely fine. You can just get more candidates into the funnel. It's always better to wait a bit longer and find the right candidate and bring them on board. So we always said, hire slow, fire fast, right? If they are not a good fit, get rid of them. And again, go through the whole process.
Yeah, very good. I think another question people may ask when it comes to hiring is that sometimes you, as a founder, might not have a clear understanding yet in terms of the time that you might need the person for. And what I mean by this is like sometimes you don't know if you need to start with a part-time position, a full-time, few hours, because realistically, it's tough to really quantify that at the beginning. So I guess when you're doing your hiring process, do you also take that in consideration, like how you define if you need a part-time, a full-time, like it's tough. That's why I think it's an interesting question, like for the sellers listening this right now. Yeah.
Yeah. So in general, I would always prioritize having full-time people over part-time people.
Okay.
So if you, because I often see a lot of sellers that have like five, eight part-time employees, rather than
Exactly. Yeah.
that have two or three full-time employees, right? Because if the employee has three or four different income sources, the moment they get a better offer,
They're gonna
they
live.
will just
Yeah.
leave.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's the last thing you want if you find someone who is good, right? So the first goal we should have in mind is we should try to bring them on board full time so they can fully commit themselves to our business. That's where we will get the most value. But of course, as you said, some sellers, especially in the beginning, you might not have 30, 40 hours of work for them. So you can come to an agreement maybe with the what we usually do with, for example, the supply manager. Maybe you have like 10, 15 hours of work for them. Even then, try to prioritize full-time employee. Let's say you bring them on board and let them also help you as a assistant in the business. Their main role they are accountable for is supply manager, where they will work 15 hours per week. But maybe you could use them for another 10 hours a week to help you, let's say, gather some data, right? Maybe something they wouldn't usually do, but it's still better to maybe pay a little extra, a little bit more than you would pay for a regular general VA, but bring them on board and make sure that they are committed to your business. But
Yeah.
when it comes to estimating the required time, once again, I like tracking my own time, and I recommend this to our clients to at least have some rough understanding how you spend your time. And if you know that you spend 10 hours a week working on supply and now you wish to delegate supply, usually a good estimate is to increase the number of hours by around 50%.
Okay.
So from 10 hours, I would bump it to 15, and that would be my estimate. Because my assumption is that, especially in the beginning, it will take them a little bit
Yeah, of
longer
course.
than it does
Yeah.
for you right now.
Yeah. That's very good. Very good. Yeah, I think I agree with the first thing you mentioned. Like sometimes if you only rely on VAs, the bad thing is that they never really become part of the culture and the ecosystem or integrate with everything that you do, and they're just jumping from project to project. And realistically, then that doesn't create the chemistry and the
Mhm.
speed that you might need in certain projects. So super important. I guess the other question I have when it comes to teams is once you hire them, right, and they're going to specific systems, how flexible you think Amazon search should be in terms of adapting these systems based on maybe new improvements or ideas that they can bring to the table that you didn't identify in the first place? Because I think that's very important. The fact that you need to also leverage the things that people bring to the table that you are not aware of. I mean, I'm a big advocate that you should never be the smartest person in the room, and you should always learn from your employees as well. So, is there something you recommend there to keep innovating the SOPs based on things your new teams identify that sometimes you stop identifying because you're not doing those activities anymore? If you see what I mean, yeah.
Yeah. So my goal, and I recommend this to everyone, is when they delegate, their goal should be to transfer the accountability for that particular process, which means that the employee becomes an owner of that
Hmm.
process, which includes improving and optimizing the process. But of course, your role then as the owner, one of the roles is to identify the bottlenecks in the business. So
Hmm.
maybe then it's your job to identify that there is something wrong with the process and there are some improvements to be made. And then you can step in and work with the employee with their skill set and their expertise and their experience to make the improvements. Because, of course, when I was running our Amazon business, I was not involved in supply at all for 3 or 4 years. So at that point, I relied on the employee to help me figure out how to optimize the process, right? The number of shipments was increasing, the number of POs were selling in multiple marketplaces, and the complexity was getting out of hand. And I identified that as a bottleneck, step in, work with the employee, work with the supply manager, and discuss a solution. Maybe you need a new tool. Maybe you just need a better to be more organized, right? Work with them, to remove the bottlenecks.
Okay, very good. And in terms of, so we can start concluding when it comes to this, like, once you create these systems and then you have your team integrated with all these new systems, um, how do you also ensure because of course we are talking about they have to be accountable, they have to keep optimizing, but sometimes you as the owner, especially like ourselves for example, that we constantly go to events, we learn new strategies and all of that. I think it's important as owners to transfer this knowledge to our team so they keep always be on top of their game as well, right? So is there some recommendation there as well in terms of maybe on a monthly basis do training for them or things like that? Is that part of your recommendation as well for your team?
Yeah, so what we did in some areas, for example, with the brand manager, it made a lot of sense to help the brand manager to be on top of things. So we recommended resources, which podcasts to listen to, which
Hmm.
books to read to, and basically we then ask them to report to us what were the findings, and then again we work together. What are the things we are going to implement in our business? In some areas it's more relevant than in others, of course. Let's say
Hmm.
PPC on Amazon
Yeah,
changing
of course.
constantly, you really need to study to be on top of things. But on the supply side, not as much, right? We just need our supply manager to be really diligent
Yeah,
and really make sure that they are detail oriented, they are not making mistakes, but they don't really need to educate themselves as much as, let's say, someone who optimizes PPC campaigns.
awesome. I mean, it's been an amazing episode, Michael. Thank you so much for all the insights. I know this is just part of what you do, and this goes so much deeper in terms of everything around systems and teams. That's why you essentially created your amazing company, Scalesport, that is specialized in that. So I guess to start concluding, and I'm sure people might be super interested in this, tell us a little bit about how to, reach out to you, work with your team. How does the process looks like when it comes to if you're an Amazon seller and want to start creating your systems and teams around that? Yeah.
Mhm. So people can go to scaleport.io where they can find our whole framework. I basically show exactly how we work with clients and also what does the whole operating system we help our clients replicate in their business look like, right? So they can see exactly step by step how everything looks like. And if they need our help, they can book a call and show us their business, and we will help them figure out how to implement everything and how to make changes. Because of course, every business is different. So we offer a consultation call. People can hop on a call with us and show us where they are right now and where they want to get. I also have a YouTube channel where I talk
Nice.
about similar topics because, of course, as you said, there are so many topics that really connect to this, whether it's
Mhm.
hiring, delegating, or building the systems, about using different software. So they can find me there. Just search for my name, Michal Špecián, and you will find me there. And if you need our help, you can find us on our website, and you can also send me an email. I'm always happy to reply and answer questions.
Thank you, Miguel. So it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for being on the show. I'm sure people are going to benefit so much from your knowledge. In the meantime, yes, I wish you all the best. And I'm sure I'm going to see you soon at upcoming events. So it's a pleasure to have you, man. Thank you for being here. Yeah.
Thank you for inviting me.